Hi Year 11, we're carrying on with our analysis of Measure for Measure. We're up to Act 4, Scene 2, which as you can see is set in the prison. This is a very long scene, so it might take more than one video, and I'll move through it fairly quickly. So we've got Provost and Pompey coming in. The Provost starts off trying to hire Pompey to be an executioner, so he just asks him if he's capable of killing someone. And Pompey replies with a bunch of innuendo, which isn't particularly important. And the Provost responds by asking him to just answer straight. And he says in a really clear, logical way, tomorrow morning, Claudio and Barnardine are going to die. In our prison, there is an executioner and he needs a helper. And then he says, if you will take it on you to assist him, it shall redeem you from your gyves. If not, you shall have your full time of imprisonment and your deliverance with an unpitied whipping. So he's saying, if you help out the executioner, we will pardon you for your crimes, but if you don't do it, then you will have to stay in prison for the length of your stay and you'll get a whipping as well. So you can see the Provost's use of the clear logical sentence structure is indicative of the Provost's approach to justice, in the same way that Pompey's use of innuendo is indicative of his lower class, vulgar sort of personality. Pompey agrees to do it, and so Provost calls the current executioner in to let him know. The executioner is called Opporson. So the Provost introduces them to each other and says if Pompey does a good job, he can get paid and he can have the job of the executioner's helper, and he can live like in a prison with Opporson. But if he's not very good, then he just has to do this once and then will get dismissed. So it shows that Pompey has the opportunity here for a legitimate lifestyle. Then there's a whole bunch of just banter between Opporson and Pompey, which isn't particularly important. It just would have been quite funny to the audience at the time because they didn't really like executioners. And that just keeps going. So basically it just goes on for a long time. And basically at the end of it, Pompey says that he'll agree to do it, that he'll help out the executioner and see how it goes. So then the Provost calls in Barnardine and Claudio. And he reflects to himself when he's alone on the stage that Claudio has his pity, but Barnardine doesn't have any pity because he's a murderer. And he says, even if Barnardine were my brother, I still wouldn't have any mercy or forgiveness for him. So again, we see that sense of justice that the Provost has. Then when Claudio enters, the Provost shows him that he's going to die at 8 o'clock tomorrow in the morning, and is told that it's midnight right now. So this scene is taking place during night, so perhaps there's an element of pathetic fallacy there. He asks where Barnardine is, and Claudio says he is sleeping, and the Provost says, okay, we'll go and prepare yourself to die. And then there's knocking and the Duke Vincentio arrives, and we see the Provost says, I hope that it's a pardon for Claudio, but it's not. It's Duke Vincentio disguised as a friar. When the Duke comes in, the first thing he asks is, who's called here of late? Who's been here? So you can see that question demonstrates that he expects that Claudio will have already been pardoned. He arrives expecting that Angelo will already have sent a messenger saying that Claudio isn't going to die. But no one's arrived, not even Isabel. So then we can see the Duke's response to that is, there will then before it's too long. So that high modality in that line indicates that he's pretty certain that Claudio is going to be forgiven. And so the Provost responds by saying, oh, is there comfort for Claudio? And the Duke says, yeah, there's hope for him. And the Provost responds to that by saying, no, there's not hope because Angelo is a bitter deputy. He's cruel. And the Duke gets quite a nice little ironic couple of lines where he says, oh no, Angelo's not bitter, because his life is like a set of parallel lines where his justice, the way that he treats other people, is a parallel to the way that he treats himself. So he says, with holy abstinence, he subdues the lust in himself, which he spurs on to use against others. So he's saying that because Angelo lives according to the rules of the law, it's fair for him to treat other people according to the rules of the law. So it says, were he stained, so mild means stained, were he stained by the quality that he's trying to correct in others, that would make him a tyrant. He would be tyrannous. But since he's not a hypocrite, since he lives the way that he expects other people to live, he's just. So that gives us the Duke's definition of justice, the idea that in order for justice to be true justice, the person who is administering it has to be honest to himself. So it's dramatic irony here, because we all know, including the Duke, that Angelo has already committed adultery by this point. Since it's midnight, the bed trick has already taken place. So then we have some knocking coming from off stage, and again we have that really highly certain statement, now they are come. The Duke has no doubt at all in his mind that Angelo is going to pardon Claudio. So the provost goes off to see who it is at the door, and the Duke comments that the provost is quite a nice guy. So the rhyming couplet there shows his approval of the provost based on the provost's sense of mercy and compassion. So you can see we're starting to get the provost coming through as a bit of a comparison to Angelo, because the provost genuinely has the qualities that the Duke thought that Angelo might have. So then there's more knocking. And the provost comes back in and says, I can't open the door, so I've woken the officer up to let him in. And the Duke straight away asks, have you got the countermand that Claudio doesn't have to die? Well, the provost hasn't actually spoken to the person at the door because the door's locked. He's just gone to wake up the officer. So, of course, the provost's answer is no. And again, we have this really highly certain comment from the Duke. It's getting close to dawn, and you will definitely hear before morning. So you shall hear before morning. So there's that high modality again, that sense of certainty. And the provost responds by saying, well, you know something, but I don't believe you. I believe there comes no countermand. No such example have we. Angelo has never before let someone off after he's already found them guilty. And he says, besides, upon the very siege of justice, Lord Angelo hath to the public ear professed the contrary. So it's linking into that theme of reputation. So because Angelo has publicly proclaimed that Claudio will die, he's not likely to go back on it. So that's there. So it's sort of like in the modern day, the criticism that a politician gets if they backflip on a promise that they make on an election. It's sort of the same way that Angelo would be judged by the people of the public if he didn't carry out the execution once he's announced that it's going to happen. So then a messenger comes on, and it is one of Angelo's servants, and the Duke responds by saying, oh, good, here's Claudio's pardon. So again, that sense of surety, he definitely thinks that the message is going to be to release Claudio. The messenger hands over a letter and says, Angelo sent you this note, and he also told me to remind you that you have to follow my rules directly, and then says goodbye. And the provost is like, of course I'll obey him. And then the Duke gets this nice aside, so he's speaking to himself in this case, and he says 3 rhyming couplets in this aside. And he says, so this is his pardon purchased by such sin for which the pardoner himself is in. So this is Claudio's pardon, and he's got this pardon because Angelo has committed the same sin as Claudio, that is the sin of adultery. Hence hath offence his quick celerity when it is born in high authority. So he's saying when someone who has high authority commits an offence, they respond to it with quick speed. So quick celerity there is a tautology because quick and celerity mean the same thing. Then he says, when vice makes mercy, mercy's so extended that for the false love is the offender friended. So Angelo's love of adultery makes him merciful, which means that he has to forgive Claudio. And then he says to the provost, what